Hi, hello. Welcome to another episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. The date is April the 22nd, 2024. Hopefully, this episode finds you well in good spirits and high hopes. As for me, I'm doing pretty good. Hopefully, you got that Monday. Hopefully, you got that Monday lasagna. Hopefully, today was very Garfield good for you. Let's see here. Work was pretty easy, nothing too crazy, nothing too wild. Let's see. Food corner for last night was very good, very scrumptious. I had chicken, catfish, and a waffle with a side of fries and a couple pieces of garlic toast. And I gotta say, I think I figured out at least my main problem with like the processed garlic toast, and that was nice, to kind of crack that Da Vinci Code for me. I think essentially it's almost like I was like undercooking it, and I know it sounds like bad or dumb or whatever, but it's just like, yeah, like I hate, like I'm usually down to like get things pretty well baked, but when it comes to garlic bread, I will like at least I used to, hate burning it. Of course I hate burning anything. So, you get it to where it starts getting that little bit of the golden glow, and you pull it out. But I think it's like really like, no, you gotta let them get golden brown, brother. You gotta really be a little bit more patient, cook them a little harder. Also, a big difference is I cook them in the oven as opposed to like an air fryer or a toaster oven. You know what I mean? So I think that really made the difference for the garlic bread. And maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll try again on a more normal dish. But really, the star was the catfish. Catfish was so good. I was kind of craving that. I actually went back to the grocery store to get it because when I initially went, it was like too early in the morning and they were setting up, and I just didn't. Once again, patience. I didn't want to wait, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get the rest of my shit and go, and maybe I'll go back out later. So that's what I wound up doing, and it was definitely worth it. Yeah, I love catfish. I think that's my favorite fish. I know that it's a bottom feeder, and maybe that's part of the thing I relate to that. I don't know, but like, yeah, it's so yummy. It's so tasty. So yeah, that's the food corner. Sticking to it. Let's go ahead and do our startup, and we'll get into some news. How's that sound? Hopefully good. Do 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 do. Oh hell yeah! All right. Excuse me. Our first story comes from the Associated Press. With homelessness on the rise, the Supreme Court weighs bans on sleeping outdoors. Also, another article I would suggest, hopefully you don't get paywalled, but Los Angeles Times. Supreme Court divided on homelessness case that will affect California encampment policy. Uh, this is a story that I had kind of caught wind of last week that the Supreme Court was going to hear the case today. And I was like, okay, like, y'all know I don't really like covering, the Supreme Court, but at the end of the day, a lot of this shit is major. And I don't know, it was definitely interesting, kind of the lead up to it. I can't remember what I was listening to. I think it was The Daily. And The Daily really kind of got me on my heels about this shit because it was just a reminder of some things. And hopefully I can, get to it. But let's go ahead and just start with the article and, just kind of try to break it down. Back to the Associated Press. The Supreme Court wrestled with major questions about the growing issue of homelessness on Monday as it considered whether cities can punish people for sleeping outside when shelter space is lacking. It's the most significant case before the High Court in decades on the issue, and comes as record numbers of people are without a permanent place to live in the United States. The case starts in the rural Oregon town of Grants Pass, which began fining people $295 for sleeping outside as the cost of housing escalated and tents sprung up in the city's public parks. The San Francisco based U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down the law under its holding that banning camping in places without enough shelter beds amounts to cruel and unusual punishment, which is something I agree with. At the end of the day, if the city does not have the actual means to like allow people to like have a place to sleep where they need it, then it's like, how can you fine them for that kind of shit? It's just, to me, it is kind of ridiculous. Kind of trying to pull back on the scant knowledge I kind of just learned over this past week. I think just decades ago, I think, was it Boise, Idaho, had this kind of situation, and that's what kind of cemented this law, because homeless people are like, we need a place to sleep. Like, this is supposed to be like our human right. So figuring that was nailed down, it's crazy that you hear this story kind of coming up through the West, like it is, like hearing Gavin Newsom saying like, oh, we really need to like have the Supreme Court flesh this out more for us, when it's like, no, you don't. You just want them to. And this is more, like I said, where I kind of get upset, because you look at the math here and you hear Gavin Newsom saying this, knowing this case is going to get floated up to a conservatively supercharged, Supreme Court. So, like, what do you mean you need this Supreme Court to figure it out when another Supreme Court figured this out for you? You need to come up with these beds. I don't care if it's expensive. Like, you know what the law is. So, essentially, it's almost like you hear Democratic politicians, governors, or whatever, saying, you know what, maybe we should just maybe let this happen, go all the way up and take its natural course. So in a way, I find myself pointing the fingers at both sides here, because they're both saying like, we're just so confused. It's just so complicated. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, we were talking about people having like basic human rights. And at the end of the day, if they cannot afford to live in these fucking homes, then it's like there needs to be shelter for them. And I get it. This isn't an easy thing. I'm not saying that this is like just easy peasy lemon fucking squeezy, but it is on the city, it is on the state to make sure that people have a place to like sleep when it's cold outside. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to live like it shouldn't come to this. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy to me that we are at a place where it's like you are finding people who don't have the money to live just for being outside and sleeping. Like, it's aggravating, it's irritating. I know I'm already getting in the weeds at the start of this, so let's keep moving. The justices appear to be leaning towards a narrow ruling in the case after hearing arguments that showed the stark terms of the debate over homelessness in western states like California, which is home to 1/3 of the country's homelessness population. Sleeping is a biological necessity, and people may be forced to do it outside if they can't get housing or there's no space in shelters, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said. Where do we put them if every city, every village, every town lacks compassion and passes a law identical to this? Where are they supposed to sleep? Are they supposed to kill themselves not sleeping? She said. Solving homelessness is a complicated question, said Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who raised questions about both the role of federal courts and of camping bans. How does it help if there are not enough beds for the number of homeless people in the jurisdiction? And then, some of the other justices want to kick around some other shit, that I don't really even feel like is worth mentioning. It's just annoying. But that being said, I don't know how they're going to wind up ruling. I really hope that there is some decency here, some human decency here, and we don't wind up in a situation where it's like, no, you should just be fining homelessness people out of existence. And it's just, this just goes back to the thing that I've said before, and I'll say again, where it's just like, is it really now like our mandate of just saying like, well, since this problem is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, we are just gonna just grind people to dust? And like, it was so sad hearing a person describe like their night of being like, look, man, I'm literally just trying to find an alley to sleep. Like, and every time I sit down, I stop, I'm getting booted to the next place. Some cop comes and said, you can't sleep here. You got to go somewhere else. And they just herded me along. And like, you hear some of these politicians, like locally or whatever, and you hear more or less that's their modus operandi. It's just like, let's just get these people up and out and through our town. You know what I mean? Like, because like we obviously can't hold them, we can't handle them, and it's like, no, you need to make these accommodations happen. It needs to be a part of your budget to expand this shit. I don't care how bad it gets. And I know this is something we're talking about out west, but don't get me wrong, this is a nationwide fucking problem. You can go out east, you can see this shit. You can see this shit in the Midwest. It's all over. It's becoming a growing problem because guess what? Shit is becoming more and more expensive. And problems like leaning on, substances or whatever, like all these things just get compounded because people are just getting more and more stressed out. You know what I mean? We're all living on the goddamn brink. I think it's such a scary thing, and it's so weird to me because I've always thought about homelessness growing up. I don't know, just being a quote unquote middle class person. That's always something I've thought about. But like hearing people like boomers and stuff talk like, oh, like homelessness wasn't as much of a thing as it was today. And that just sounds so forlorn and funny to me. Like, what do you mean? And it's just like, money was just, it was just better. It was just easier to live in that regard, I guess. I don't fucking know. But regardless, I just feel like us as humanity, we can't just continue on this path line of just saying, hey, we're going to punish the homeless for being homeless. Like that just can't be the move. No way. No fucking how. So yeah, I really just kind of focus on the AP article here, but I do suggest if you're more interested in it and you want to get more insights, the Los Angeles Times article is useful as well. Let's go ahead and move on. I'm getting back on my train shit. All right. We're going to talk about a fucking fiery train incident, from WLWT5. Investigation underway after railroad track catches fire in Lawrenceburg. An investigation is underway after a railroad caught fire in Lawrenceburg last Wednesday. Or, I'm sorry, I'm just pulling dates out of my fucking ass. In Lawrenceburg late Sunday night. Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. It happened on AEP Drive around 11:45 when a passerby noticed flames on the railroad tracks. The railroad is owned by CSX. Ooh, okay. And I love this. This is when Isaiah says, okay, put this on the board, right? You know how last year we talked a lot, like, okay, we started noticing like Norfolk Southern was doing a lot of shit post East Palestine. Well, technically, I think maybe this year CSX is taking it right now in terms of incidents. Now, I mean, these are railroad ties or whatever. It might not be. I got a burp. I'm trying to get it out, but it's like a frog in my throat. Officials tell us about 1/3 of the railroad ties, the wooden beams that connect the two pieces of track, caught fire. So this might not necessarily be CXX as a whole. There might not be on them. It might be on the actual railroad tracks themselves. So maybe I shouldn't point the finger so soon. But you know what I mean? I like to keep track of these kind of things. You know what I mean? Hold motherfuckers accountable, potentially. Maybe. But according to Lawrenceburg fire official, the Greater Cincinnati hazmat team says that with the edge, or with, oh my God, I can't see words correctly today. With the age of the cross ties, there will not be significant contamination to surrounding areas. In a statement, CSX said, at around 12 a.m. this morning, CSX was notified that some rail ties adjacent to our track were on fire. As a precaution, CSX held all rail traffic on that line until the fire was extinguished. Normal operations resumed shortly after 3 a.m. this morning. CSX appreciates the swift response of local first responders. So, I mean, hey, let's do the best silver lining we can do in one of these train situations. It doesn't seem like anything spilled. There was no crazy plastics, no chemicals, just a fire on the tracks, just a little casual fire, nothing major. Okay, so we've more or less actually made it through halfway. Wow, we really did that. The rest of this is kind of some protest activity from last week and I guess today as well, but I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a rundown here. So, and this is about the Israel-Palestine situation. So, let's do a little talking. I kind of got bogged down last week. There's so much fucking news, and we'll kind of use at least the top of this week, at least today, kind of do a little catch-up. Let's see here. But from CNBC, Google terminates 28 employees after multi-city protests. Read the full memo. We're not going to read the full memo, but it is available for you if you'd like. But yeah, let's go ahead and dig in. Google terminated 28 employees Wednesday, according to an internal memo viewed by CNBC, after a series of protests against labor conditions and the company's contract to provide the Israeli government and military with cloud computing and artificial intelligence services. The news comes one day after 9 Google workers were arrested on trespassing charges Tuesday night after staging a sit-in at the company's offices in New York and Sunnyvale, California, including a protest in Google Cloud CEO Thomas Kurian's office. Some of the arrested workers in New York and Sunnyvale who spoke with the CNBC earlier Wednesday said that during the protest they were locked out of their work accounts and offices, placed on administrative leave, and told to wait to return to work until being contracted by Human Resources. Let's see. The arrests, which were live streamed on Twitch by participants, follow rallies outside Google offices in New York, Sunnyvale, and Seattle, which attracted hundreds of attendees, according to workers involved. The protesters were led by the No Tech for Apartheid organization focused on Project Nimbus, Google and Amazon's joint $1.2 billion contract to provide the Israeli government and military with cloud computing services, including AI tools, data centers, and other cloud infrastructure. Let's see here. This evening, Google indiscriminately fired over 24 workers, including those among us who did not directly participate in yesterday's historic bi-coastal 10-hour sit-in protests. No Tech for Apartheid said in a statement, adding, "In the 3 years that we have been organizing against Project Nimbus, we have yet to hear from a single executive about our concerns. Google workers have the right to peacefully protest about terms and conditions of our labor. These firings are clearly retaliatory." Now, this is the kind of action that I'm totally fucking about. It's unfortunate that Google decided to say, oh, we don't like this. Obviously, we're not going to comply with what you guys want. So we're just going to quash it. We're just going to fucking do legal action. We're just going to fucking kick you out of the building and fire you. That's not very carbon neutral of them. It's one of those things where I kind of hate about Google. They focus so much on this image of like being like cool, quirked up, like almost like very liberal. Maybe I'm like inserting that vernacular or ethos into them, but it feels like that. Like, you guys got bikes in your goddamn like work campus. I feel like that's like a trickle down to my warehouse where we're doing that shit now. Ugh, whatever, it's dumb. But you want to maintain this image, but meanwhile, you're just like any fucking company. At the end of the day, you're going to will to any kind of capitalist demand that is going to get you money. It's going to net you a fucking profit. So, yeah, of course, working with a nation state like Israel is going to do that, and you're not going to compromise that. You're not going to jam that up. So, of course, firing like 30 some odd people is not going to be like a hard move for you. It's just breakage. And it's unfortunate because, once again, I just feel like Google cares about its image so fucking much, but yet is gonna do this shit. And I just feel like this kind of stuff is bad for that said image. You know what I mean? Like, but it is what it is. I get how like they are legally allowed to do this kind of shit at the end of the day in terms of like quashing it the way that they are. But this is one of those kinds of direct action things or that I'm about. You know what I mean? It's nonviolent. It's not like they came through and started smashing shit. At the end of the day, they did the best they could to vocalize their problems and want to like sit down with Google top brass and say, hey, like, tell us what's going on and like let's work to like stop doing this because we shouldn't be doing this. And, the response was met with what it was. And clearly, I think that's going to be better for the No Tech Apartheid, movement or No Tech for Apartheid movement at the end of the day, because you're highlighting this thing and you're showing what Google does here, and I don't know. This to me, it just works. It sends the clear cut message. It just says it just highlighted perfectly in my mind because this is the kind of shit that I didn't know that was going on in Google and Amazon, but I'm not surprised, And hopefully we do see some change out of that, but who knows? Who can say? At the end of the day, I don't think Google is going to stop working on this said Project Nimbus, and it's a shame that people had to lose their jobs over this kind of shit. You know what I mean? Because like, I mean, hopefully they sue or whatever, for wrongful termination or what have you. But these contracts are pretty smart. You know what I mean? They have nice bigwig lawyers coming up with this shit well in advance. So I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't that big of a wave post this moment. But at the same time, I mean, it is relevant. It is historic. I totally fucking agree with that. So yeah, I'm happy to cover it. It's a shame that Google made this move, but I mean, yeah, I hope it fucking backfires on them. They definitely look like fucking clowns, but yeah, it is what that is. And then last, there is another set of protests in another arena, the campus arena. We've kind of talked about this a little bit, at least in the past, but there's been more, and I don't cover every protest that happens. And that's unfortunate. That's on me. You can put the blame on me. But I do my best, and I've had an opening today to kind of talk about this shit. There was more with Yale University. So I was like, okay, perfect. Let's kind of talk about that and maybe do a little bit of rewinding-ish a little bit. But yeah, before we do that, I want to take my last break. I want to do a little bit of recharging, and then we'll go ahead and get on campus. Let's go to school. Let's fucking talk about that shit, dude. Ooh, a little bit of an aside. I did college for one semester. Ooh, and then I was out of that motherfucker. Not that I didn't want to. Actually, it was really cool. Doing the school thing kind of lines up with like who I was at that time. Like, being in high school, like this is my life. This is all I care about. And then being like, okay, now we're in college. But there was some family stuff. Dad got sick. I really wanted to, definitely kind of focus more on that. And just kind of never looked back and never went back. But that's neither here nor there. I'm a trash crushing podcaster now. Oof. But let's talk about some issues. Let's talk about some things going on. Some protests. From NBC News. Police arrest pro-Palestinian supporters at encampment on Yale University Plaza. Find that a certain kind of harmony going from one encampment to another. But police officers arrested protesters who set up an encampment on Yale University's campus in support of the Palestinian cause, one of the growing number of American universities where there have been demonstrators surrounding the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Protesters have been on their third night of camping out to urge Yale to divest from military weapons manufacturers, the Yale Daily News reported. Officers gathered at the protest site at Beinecke Plaza shortly before 7 a.m. Monday and were seen approaching the encampment and flipping up the entrances to the tents, the school paper wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. I just like saying Twitter, man. I hate that we've changed. But I'm glad. I don't want to have to keep reading that shit over and over and over again. Then officers issued a warning for students and journalists to leave or they'd be arrested. Reading this out loud, it's crazy that they said, yo, and journalists. Like, what? Like, the journalists are here reporting. And they're like, no. We are going to go full stormtrooper mode. Like, we're 4 or 5 seconds from wilding, okay? Oh, man, I love it in America. Clap it up for us. Minutes later, the school paper wrote on X that police were arresting people. In total, 47 students were issued summons, Yale said in a statement Monday. Yeah, freedom to express yourself, freedom of speech, man. I love that shit. But unless you're at a place of learning, and they say it's too liberal on these college campuses, man, they're really working against that. They were taken to a Yale police facility where they were processed, charged with first-degree criminal trespass, a misdemeanor, and released. The New Haven mayor said. God, I cannot speak. The New Haven mayor's office said. The university said protesters were asked to leave and remove their belongings after officials had notified protesters numerous times that if they violated university policies about occupying outdoor spaces, they could face law enforcement. There it was. The frog has hopped the building. And disciplinary action. Some left voluntarily Monday morning, which, dude, I totally fucking get, dude. At the end of the day, you're seeing the writing on the wall. It's like they are going to fucking close in on us. They are going to do it. And it's just time to go. And other motherfuckers are like, no, we're fucking about this shit. We are staying until they fucking do the thing. And I mean, and then it happened. Let's see. Those arrested will also be referred for Yale disciplinary action, which includes a range of sanctions such as a reprimand, probation, or suspension, the university said. By 8 p.m., no students were left on the plaza, and all protesters remaining on the plaza had been arrested. So, yeah, I mean, I think this was the wrong call. I think this is wrong. I mean, I get it. At the end of the day, I think these universities, as I said before, they are going for let's stick our heads in the sand and let's nullify any opposition. And so essentially it's like we see any kind of pro-Palestinian thing come up. Well, there's inevitably going to be a counter to that, and people are going to tell us to do something about it, and they're going to be out as well. So let's just go ahead and just like zero it out. Let's just like say, hey, cancel the speeches. You know, we've talked about that with USC. I think they took it a further mile to say, oh, we're just not going to have anyone speak on the day, you know, not as a valedictorian. Let's just, because they couldn't win there and they couldn't put her back up. So like, let's just cut everybody and say that we're just, you know, doing it that way, which I don't think is a win. I think once again, you're just taking things away from more people and not fixing your fucking issue, not fixing your problem. But let's see, there is more. I know there's also Columbia. That was a big one. I believe 100 students, 100 pro-Palestinian students were arrested, which is wild to me. I know that there was some talk about Ilhan Omar's daughter, who is a congresswoman, and you know, so her daughter was arrested and I think is no longer allowed on the campus, or at least isn't allowed on campus as of now. I'm kind of just freestyling that part a bit. But, I mean, it's just crazy that this is so, I don't know, not rampant, but just, like, the responses are wild. Just to see, like, cops coming through and bust shit up. And I always get scared because I'm thinking, like, man, like, are we, like, potentially, like, pushing towards like a Kent situation and like someone like, you know, kids get killed over this shit, over like speaking their goddamn mind, which you should be allowed to do. Let me see here. Let me get rooted again back in the article because there's other spots too, not just Columbia. 3 Boston area university, Tufts, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Emerson also had protest encampments over the weekend, organizers said. Meanwhile, Harvard restricted access to Harvard Yard, a grassy area enclosed by fences on campus, through Friday afternoon. The school paper, the Harvard Crimson, reported the decision was in apparent anticipation of student protests. A notice posted on Yard Gate said the structures, including tents and tables, are not permitted in the yard without prior permission, and that students violating these policies are subject to disciplinary action. Let's see here. Yale has been under months of sustained pressure to disclose and divest from investments in military weapons manufacturers, Occupy Beneke said. However, on Wednesday, Yale said its advisory committee on investor responsibility would not recommend divestment because it had concluded that military weapons manufacturing for authorized sales did not meet the threshold of grave social injury, and because this manufacturing supports socially necessary uses, such as law enforcement and national security. So this is where I hit pause, and I was like, wait. Are colleges like giving money to the military? And I'm sure like someone in the cosmic universe is like, duh, you idiot. And it's like, that just was like, wow, okay. And essentially they're like, yeah, we're not really gonna tell you. Maybe if you sit down and be more formal, we can have a better conversation. But essentially, TDLR, the answer is no, we're not divesting. It's not that big a deal. And it's like, it's a big deal that you're even doing it in the first place. That this is knowledge to me, you know, as just a dude at 33. It's not like they tell you that. And you know, I don't know. Maybe they do, and I missed that day. I don't know, boy. What the fuck? So that was wild to learn, and unfortunate to hear. But let me see. Was there anything else I really wanted to pull here? No, I think we're good. I will say that it is annoying in some ways, once again, kind of talking about spin and media, to just hear about, the pro Palestinian side. I feel like I have to kind of go to Twitter to hear some of the fucked up shit that's going on the other end of it. But let's see here. Maybe I can pull it here from the New Republic. This is where one of the places where I found out that like 100 students were arrested in Colombia. But I know that there was like some guy who was also. Well, here we go. Shy David. Here we go. This is back to the Columbia thing. One Columbia professor, Shy Davidai. I can't pronounce it right, but who was who has attracted criticism over alleged threats to pro-Palestinian students and calls to bring in the National Guard to shut down the protest, who was also told to stay away from campus on Monday. Which, that would be so crazy to hear. Like, you're just hanging out, you're doing your thing, you're protesting, you're allowed, you feel like you're allowed to do this, right? You feel like it's your American right? Meanwhile, you have someone over there counter protesting, more or less threatening your whole life, saying that the like National Guards will come and kill you, like to come and break this shit up that way. Once again, doing it Kent State, more or less. And that's disturbing. That's fucking weird. And I'm not saying that like everyone on the pro-Palestinian side is being super copacetic and super nice and like abiding by all kind of like non-violent ethics. I'm not fucking saying that. You can never control every single motherfucking person at a protest. But at the end of the day, man, it's just crazy that people are trying to sit down and do their democratic American fucking right, and like that's being impeded on a goddamn college campus. And this is happening in other places too. Like I said, I've been, semi-lax, I feel like, as of recently. I'm trying to catch up, trying to do better, kind of talking about this shit. That's why I'm taking so much time to do it. But yeah, just wanted to talk about it. Wanted to, say my 2 cents. And I feel like I've said 2.5, and it's been too long. But thank you so much for listening to me ramble and rant and whine. If you would like to help out, support the effort, I do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Isaiah News. Free ways to send feedback, connect with me, IsaiahNews1@gmail.com. I'm on all the socials, either me, the podcast. Hopefully you can subscribe to the YouTube. We got an account. Feel free to do that. Really helps out a lot. Hit that like button. Leave a cool comment. Feel free to do that on any of the other platforms you're listening on. And hopefully I see you soon for some more good news. I love ya. Bye-bye. Mwah.